All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to create this bubble invasion game where the bubble goes across the screen with erratic movements up and down, where you have to pop the bubble with the cursor. Each time you pop a bubble, your score increases, and if the bubble makes it all the way across the screen, you lose a life and you have 5 different lives, and then the game's over and you try to get the highest score possible. I think this game is good for maybe middle school, high school students, beginners with JavaScript. It's pretty easy to do, and I will try to do my best to give you instructions on how to do it. Okay, so let's start. All right, so I'm going to write this code in the sandbox for CodeHS. So what we would do is we would choose sandbox, and then we want a default JavaScript program. There are some constants that we can start out with here. You can either type these in yourself, or I will leave a link in the description where you can copy and paste these in. And in our first step here, it says stage 1, we're going to draw the heads-up display. Okay, so we want to draw the heads-up display, which is a red rectangle exactly covering the top of the canvas. Use HUD height for the height of the rectangle and HUD color for the color of the rectangle. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're using functions. All right, so we want to break this down into as many functions as we can. So let's start out and just call this function HUD for heads up display. And then what I want to do is I want to create a variable, and I'm going to create a rectangle. So I'm going to call this HUD rectangle, RECT, equals new rectangle. And we're going to use the width of the screen. So we're going to use get width. And we're going to use HUD height, which is a constant for the height of the rectangle. We're going to set the color. So HUD rectangle, set color. And then we're going to use the constant HUD color, which we have set to red in our constants. We're going to set the position of the rectangle. And then we're going to add the rectangle. Okay, so let's test this. So if we run this, well, before we run it, we have to call it. Okay, so we have to make our start function, and we call HUD. We call the function, and then we get our heads up display. Okay, so that's stage 1. In stage 2, we're going to spawn the bubble. So at this point, if you're doing this in a class, you make sure that you've used the timer and you've done graphics, because we're going to rely on those for the next stages that we do. Also, mouse clicks, that's going to be important, and movement. So those are some of the prerequisites you're going to need to do the other parts of this. All right, so in the next part here, we are going to start stage 2, which is spawning a bubble. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a bubble that is outside the right edge of the screen, below the heads-up display, and it's going to start its movement across the screen. But before I do that, let's put in a comment for my function heads-up display. So this creates the heads-up display, and then our spawn bubble, we're going to say spawns a bubble on the right side of the screen. All right, so let's write the spawn bubble function. So spawn bubble. All right, now when we do the spawn bubble function, what we have to remember now is that we are going to create a variable bubble. Now this bubble variable is going to be used by other functions. And I know it might, as a beginner, we're going to use a global variable. And I know global variables are frowned upon as you get into higher level computer programming, but we are going to do it with the global variable, and we're going to use other global variables too. So to create a global variable for bubble, I'm going to put it outside the start function, and we're going to call this variable bubble. The other thing we want to remember now is that we have lowercase for this variable, and when we use bubble radius, we're going to have uppercase, okay? So that could be some syntax errors as you're writing this. So to spawn the bubble, what we want to do is we want to create a new circle, and we want it to be of size bubble underscore RAD for bubble radius. Okay. I am going to use some local variables to set its initial position. So we're going to say variable x equals get width minus bubble underscore radius. What this will do is this will move to the very right edge of the screen using get width. Sorry, we're going to add bubble radius. When we test it though, we're going to use minus so we can see it on the screen. When we're adding the constant bubble radius, it's going to move it off of the screen. I'll show you when we go to test this. We're going to say variable y for the up and down position, and we're going to use a randomizer now because we want that bubble to spawn anywhere below the HUD height and above the bottom edge of the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go randomizer, next int, and we're going to go bubble underscore RAD times 2, which would give us a diameter, plus HUD height. Okay. So what that is doing is it's going to take our HUD height, so it's going to adjust us down the HUD height so we can get below that red rectangle, and then it's going to add bubble radius times 2, so that will fit a full circle underneath the HUD height at its lowest Y position. And then take that back, at the very top of the screen, that would be the very top position of the bubble. So now the very bottom position of the bubble is going to be get height minus 2 times bubble radius, or bubble radius times 2. All right, so what that'll do is it'll move us down to the very bottom of the screen, get height, and then it's going to subtract 1 diameter, so it'll fit a circle at the very bottom. So that's the lowest position one of the bubbles can be. We're going to do a random color for this bubble. So we're going to say set color, and we're going to go randomizer, next color, and then we are going to set the position, and we're going to use those X and Y variables that we just created, and we're going to add bubble. Okay. So what I want to do now is, I also have to call it. So let's go back up to the start function and let's just do a test call for this. So we're going to call spawn bubble. All right. Now, when we call this, when we go to look, we're not going to see anything at this point. When we run it, we shouldn't see anything. Okay, now we got a syntax error in here. Get width, it does not like. Why doesn't it like get width? Are we not in, oh, I need a W here, capital W. Okay, clear that, run it. Get height, I need a capital H. And get height. Should know better than that. All right, let's run it again. Okay, so we see here we're not seeing any bubbles on the right-hand edge of the screen. Well, that's because it's off the screen. So let's change this to test it. Let's put in a minus. We run it and we can see we have a bubble on the right edge, and we can start to test this. Once we know it's working, spawning bubbles. So now what we'll do is we'll switch this back to plus, which will move it off the screen, but we know that they're there. Okay. All right, so that would be part one of the video. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll start moving the ball across the screen, and we'll start putting in the code to keep score and to pop the bubbles. All right, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.